So while I was putting away my rig the other day, I noticed that some of these windows were a bit loose. I thought at first maybe my kids didn't close them shut, but what it turns out is that these double pane windows are starting to delaminate. And what you can see is that there's a gap between the frame and the outer pane. So I called around to a couple of shops, and every shop told me that I basically had to replace the whole unit. Given that I have a couple of these units that are starting to delaminate, that's going to be quite expensive. So I looked around on the blogs, and some people have tried to re-glue these panes back together. So I'm going to try to do that first before we go ahead and start ordering new glass for this unit. So I've checked most of these windows, and the good thing is that it looks like it's only the vent sections that are delaminating, and it seems to be only on the smaller windows, so this might be easier for me to handle. A quick Google search would show that this is actually a problem with a lot of these RVs, and there's actually a recall on these windows, but the recall doesn't actually cover my year. So unfortunately, I have to try to fix this myself. I've also noticed that on the vents that have failed, that the weather stripping is rather compressed. As you can see here, it's actually quite compressed here at the bottom compared to at the edge here. So what this indicates to me is that perhaps this window has been overly pulled in. And what this will do is it'll actually create additional pressure on the outer piece of glass as it hits these little pieces of rubber on the outside. So I think I'm going to replace this weather stripping as well, so that I don't actually have to pull the window in as tightly next time, which will alleviate some of the stress on this outer pane. So while I'm inspecting all these windows, I have all the screen of the windows off. And so what I've noticed is on some of these screens, the piece of material holding the mesh in has come loose. So if this happens, this is actually a very easy fix. All you have to do is just push this little piece of rubber back inside this channel, and your screen will be locked in place again. Alright, so I've read the manual on how to remove these. It should be pretty straightforward. First you take out this screw. It's a Phillips. Take that guy out, set it aside, don't lose it. Should be able to pull this guy off. Maybe not. Yeah, there we go. And then the manual says you have to drill out these 2 rivets. So it looks like a 3/32 drill bit is the key. I got that side out, so I'll do this one. And there you go, there comes the rivet. So once you get that out, the window should pop out without a problem. You might want to do this on the outside so you don't drop the glass. But essentially you raise it to 90 degrees, you push in, and the window pops right out. The biggest challenge to resealing one of these units is that we can't get the moisture out of it because we can't put a vacuum in between the 2 panes of glass. So what will happen eventually is that after we seal it up, it will fog up eventually when it gets cold out. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to put some desiccant inside of it so that it can absorb some of the moisture once we seal it up, and hopefully it absorbs enough moisture that the fogging won't be so bad. Do you have desiccant in there, Fiona?
Yep. There you go.
All right, eat up, eat up. We need more of those. So I've cleaned up this glass on the inside as well as I can, just with Windex and shoving paper towels inside. I've also tried to clean up this bead along here with some rubbing alcohol to try to clean off the surface that I'll be mating. I left a chopstick in there to kind of air it out and hopefully get some of that moisture from the Windex out of there, and I've also I'm gonna use a blow dryer, try to dry it out as much as I can before I seal it up. Alright, so I'm gonna try to use 2 packs of this desiccant in each window. Fast curing urethane. It's just a typical auto glass adhesive. So I think that's what was on here before. So hopefully if I just put this back on, it will hold the glass in place. Cleaned off the old weather stripping, and we put some brand new weather stripping in there, and this stuff is all nice and plush and should give a very good even seal. Alright, so we finally got the window back in, and now we just need to put all the hardware back in. So instead of putting rivets back in here, we're actually going to just put some screws with nuts. That way, if we ever need to take this off again, it will be easier next time. So after I got the glass back in, I wasn't very happy with how well the weather strip sealed against the glass. Around the corners, I felt it was a bit loose and there was a bit of a gap. And what I really wanted was the inner glass to sit against the seal instead of the outer glass against these rubbers. So what I ended up doing was getting this thicker seal. So this one's a 12 millimeter, whereas this one's an 8 millimeter. So I've already done it on one of the glasses and it turned out much better. So with the thicker seal, the inner glass is the one that's resting on the seal, and there's actually a little bit of gap between the outer pane and these bumpers and the outer frame. My hope is that that puts less stress on the outer glass and therefore less stress on the seal between the 2 panes, and hopefully that will rectify the problem. So I did find there was a little bit of a trick to pulling these adhesives off. I used to do it as quick as I could, and then I'd be left with all this adhesive that I had to clean off with a bit of mineral spirits. What I realized is if I peel it really slowly, the adhesive actually pulls itself loose. And so if you allow it to pull itself off, there's actually a lot less cleanup to do. Alright, so here's the new D-seal that I put on there. It's nice and thick. And here it is, the all fixed window. You can see no movement on the outside anymore. Roll it in. And a very tight seal all the way around. So there it is, all done. So what I've done is in the inside I've pulled it as tight as I can, then I backed it off a bit. That way, as you can see, there's still a bit of room before this outer pane actually hits those bumpers. So hopefully there's absolutely no stress on this outer pane and that seal that failed.